We now have here's the latest count, 5 Republican senators who say they're not voting for the House Obamacare replacement bill as it stands. Tom Cotton just joined the other 4, who are Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz and Susan Collins. Senator Collins, by the way, said that the House plan would be dead on arrival in its present form in the Senate. Joining us now, Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, and he is a member of the Freedom Caucus, who objects vigorously to the House plan as it now stands. What would it take, Congressman, for you to go with a House plan at some point in the future? What has to change?
Stuart, based on what you just said about the Senate and 5 individuals against it, why don't we do what we did before, that they all voted for, that the House members all voted for? Let's pass a clean repeal. That's what I introduced that bill yesterday, so a clean repeal, and then we can focus on the replacement. The effective date of the clean repeal is not for 2 years, so there's time to wind down, there's time for a market to actually form, and we can focus on what really needs to be the focus, which is bringing back affordable insurance for working class families and middle class families.
But that's the real argument, isn't it? The real argument is, what do you replace it with? What's the plan for replacement?
Right.
That's the argument.
Right, and I mean, one thing we can all agree on is Obamacare has been a disaster. It's a mess, driven up cost, fewer choices, and that's one of the reasons it's driven up cost. So let's get rid of it. We put this on President Obama's desk. He vetoed it just a little over a year ago. So let's put the same piece of legislation on President Trump's desk. We know we can agree on that. Let's pass that, and then let's focus on those regs that we have to get rid of: health savings accounts, association health plan formation, purchasing across state lines, interstate shopping, all those things that make sense that will bring back a market.
But some of those things could come, couldn't they? In phase 2 or phase 3, you could get a national market for health insurers. You could do that. You could get competition between drug companies to get prices down. All of that comes in phase 2 and phase 3.
I agree, but let's do phase 1 right. Right now we don't have agreement on phase 1. The one thing we can have agreement on is what we passed before. So we can still do the phase 2 and phase 3 like you just described, but let's do phase 1 where we all agree on. And one thing we all agree on, and frankly, one thing we told the voters we were going to do, they sent us here to do, was to repeal Obamacare. We didn't tell them we were going to repeal it, but keep the Medicaid expansion and extend it. We didn't tell them we were going to repeal it and keep some of the Obamacare taxes, which is what's in this plan that the leadership brought forward. We didn't tell them that. So let's do what we told them. Let's repeal it, and we can still do phase 2 and phase 3. That's fine. But let's be consistent, and let's do what we told the voters.
Well, can I just bring up the leverage which I think President Trump does have with members of the Freedom Caucus? Mark Meadows is the chair, and President Trump won 16 of the 16 counties in his district.
Yeah.
If Congressman Meadows and his fellow Freedom Caucus members, if they say no and they ditch this plan on Obamacare and it doesn't go through and the whole thing is held up, I mean, President Trump could go to that district and say, your guy held things up, it's his fault.
Two things. The White House has been very clear that they are open for real debate, robust debate, changes to this bill, and that's what we're focused on doing, making this bill something that actually is consistent with what we said. Second, no one helped President Trump in North Carolina more than Mark Meadows. He was the one member of that delegation who did more for President Trump in that state than any other member. And so many Freedom Caucus people were doing that. When we had folks in the Republican Party who weren't willing to help our nominee during the campaign, it was a bunch of Freedom Caucus guys who were out there making sure that we didn't have Hillary Clinton as president, that we elected Donald Trump, who I think, as you said earlier, is one of the reasons the market's up, job creation is up, wages are going up. So we helped him in all our states. We were out there making sure our nominee won. So that may be the case, you may be right, but I think it's important to remember what happened last fall as well.
Okay, I want to move on to another story here. It's a developing story. U.S. Marines have arrived in Syria. They're, 68 miles from Raqqa, which is acknowledged to be the capital of ISIS. The Pentagon's considering sending 1,000 more troops to Kuwait to help the fight. Congressman, it looks to me like we've got boots on the ground. They're firing guns in anger. We have returned to the Mideast with guys who are shooting guns. So what do you make of this?
Well, we're going to have to get briefed on